We are here today with visiting professors Andy Bayiates and Genevra Gallo-Bayiates. Andy Bayiates is a playwright and brand journalist who lives in Chicago area. He's the creator and co-writer of 45 plays for 45 presidents and 45 plays for America's First Ladies. First Ladies will have its digital world premiere with the Neo-Futurists this fall. We will talk about that. He's recently written 2 plays with the Merrimack Rep in Massachusetts, Lost Lives, the slapstick tragedy of Fatty Arbuckle, which I have seen. He wrote that with co-writer Aaron Minaz, and the coronavirus-delayed play, The Lowell Offering, which he co-wrote with his wife, Genevra Gallo-Bayiates. Genevra is a social media marketing writer and playwright. She is a co-writer on the aforementioned 45 plays for 45 presidents, 45 plays for America's First Ladies, and The Lowell Offering, and has been published by Haymarket Press, Commonplace Books, Play Scripts, and Hope and None Things. Andy and Genevra, welcome to Balderdash Academy.
It's like you guys work well together or something.
So, I mean, I'm a playwright. When the pandemic hit, I spent about 2 weeks with cancellation after cancellation after cancellation. And then I started reworking my work to go online digitally. It's been a godsend, but it's also had its complications. So how is that working with 45 plays for America's First Ladies? How is that transition from a stage show to a virtual show working for you?
This show has disruption in its DNA. So we came up with it in 2016 during the election.
We had the most awesome ending ever.
Oh yeah, it was like a first lady was going to become president. We were going to have our first dude, and because 45 plays was 43 plays and then 44 plays. It just doesn't end. And we update it every few years, and Play Scripts is lovely enough to republish it. Yeah, it's great. It's great. But we thought the pitch that I was making to our 2 new co-writers when we were hunting down Sharon Green and Bilal Dardai, I was like, this thing's going to have a great ending. It's like, we're not going to have to keep writing it. It's going to, yeah. And we'll actually be able to the show, it would have like a powerful ending. Like we could work on that. It wouldn't just be like 45 discrete plays that stop with a lovely bow at the end, but we'd actually be able to lead to something. And then, of course, we all know how that turned out. So we had to,
spoilers.
Yes. And then, who's going to write Melania? And it was just, yeah, sorry. So it was just so it's weird, but also kind of not surprising. I don't know if it's just some kind of evidence that astrology is a thing, but when we got to producer, we got the Neo-Futurists were going to premiere it, and then we had 5 other companies that were going to go after it. So we're gonna have a rolling world premiere, which is gonna be really exciting places. Yeah, and those are all obviously on hold. And at first it was kind of do we trash it? Do we hold? What do we do? And it was really Chloe, who's one of their co-writers. She wrote for Presidents too. She's the one who saved the project. I think we were all kind of I don't know, because I think none of us are super excited about the medium. This will be my first foray into it. It'll be interesting to see how I actually liked writing it. Oh gosh, I'm talking too long. Patriarchy. But she was the one who was really no, I really think we should do this digitally, and here's why. And she made the pitch, and she sold us. And so I would say it was not that hard because of the neo-futurist aesthetic. It just the way that those plays work, those short plays that the company produces, it translates really well to this play being done in 5 different places in people's apartments.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Neo-Futurists is an experimental theater troupe. Focuses, if I'm not wrong, it focuses on a fusion of sport, poetry, theatrical journalism, brevity, honesty, and affordability.
Yeah,
was I close?
Yeah. That's like, I think that was like our old mission statement. That's like a good academic way of. I think the easiest way is like we like play ourselves. We don't play characters. We don't suspend disbeliefs. We don't try to say this play is happening in like France and like the audience isn't there. So it's so easy to just do something, translate something like that to Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this writing was pretty easy. It was kind of fun and freeing to be like, what happens next? Oh, she runs over to her own bathroom and throws it away in the toilet. Like, oh yeah, that's funny, right? Like it was just, I felt it was kind of freeing. How did you feel about the process? I'm sorry for talking so long.
I'm one of the people I think in the writing team that's been brought along maybe like dragging my feet toward this process. And I really appreciate why people felt like, no, this has to happen now. It has to happen this year. I totally get it. And I think we're very lucky that the Neo-Futurists had so quickly transitioned to a digital platform.
Yes.
So they had switched to doing the Infinite Wrench online like really quickly. And then it was extremely successful. So we're very lucky that our producing entity has familiarity with this and does not feel scared at all by it. Like they're very much on board, which I think is a huge boon. I think, it's a huge experiment. And that's very neo-futurist, like this idea of like, let's stand on the precipice and jump up, like what?
Yeah.
So it's, we'll see. It's a big experiment. And I think that it'll be interesting to see how people react to the play in that format.
In my experience so far with the process, theater hasn't died, but it has evolved. And in the process of having these theaters shut down, the online performances made it far more democratic and far more available to the public. So it's almost destroyed the elitism. I mean, look at Hamilton. You're talking about $250 a ticket in New York. For $7, you can watch it as many times as you want with better views than if you went to see it live. So I think the transition, and I hope the transition is something that's going to last and people don't get worn out about it, that we just don't become another media.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about is your process, right? So we've all done Q&As after a show, and there's always that one question that always happens, which is either, where do you get your ideas? Or how did you develop the deeper meanings in the show? And I don't know about you, but for me, the ideas come because I start writing and I just follow the emotional narrative. And the deeper meaning, I usually find editing and then add it in to make myself look brilliant, right? Like it's never planned. It's always accidental. So, I mean, my question is, how do you handle the process of creation, writing in the framework of history? Where you have that set timeline that you're adhering to.
Right. And facts.
I think in some ways it's a little easier to be writing things that are based in or anchored in history, because you already then have your framework. So it's sort of like it gives you this nice little box to play within. And then really your job becomes figuring out which kernels speak to you, which elements of story are the ones that pop out to you the most. And then that's where you focus all your attention and you sort of dive in and tease apart that area. I know that for both presidents and first ladies, because we had 5 writers and we sort of divided everybody up evenly, that's really, that's what everybody had to do. And it's so short, like you really only have like 2 to 3 minutes at the most to tell each individual story. And so you have to kind of really pick and choose what's the one thing that's the most important thing,
Well, you're distilling a life down to a page and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're lucky.
Yeah. And I think Lowell Offering, that process was a little bit different because the heartbeat and the tension of that play, even though, so we had all the history, and the heartbeat and the tension of the play became clear really early on. And so we were very, very aware of it through the whole writing process. And actually our revision process, I think, has been about making that heartbeat storyline as clear as possible. So sort of like we try to keep it going through the whole thing and not diverge from, we trim everything else away. I don't know if you would agree with
the thread.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the process is different for everything that I approach. It's always like I'm kind of a beginner every time I do it. But I agree with what you said about history. I think it's nice because so many stories are character driven. But when the boundaries of a real person are not as intimidating as you might think, because you start reading about them and then they start feeling like a real person. They start becoming a character in your own mind. And as long as you don't question, well, is that what they were really like? And you think, no, and you just instead you feel like, oh, a character is emerging and it's mine. It's my interpretation, and I own this interpretation of this person. I wrote a play where I had Abraham Lincoln as a character, and I was like, he's my Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to make him behave however I want, but within the bounds of that persona that we all know very well. That's all I would add to that, I think.
So how did the actual man, when I'm talking Jimmy Carter, who saw your show, how did that man react to that caricature of himself?
That is so cool.
We're talking about Jimmy Carter, so obviously it was with dignity and with grace and kindness. Right, but
So I've heard. So you believe it, I was a broke artist, and like back then, and so we couldn't get there. The Secret Service doesn't give you much notice that that the president is coming to see the show. And it was down in Atlanta, and it was like, Jimmy Carter's coming tomorrow. Can you fly out? And it was like, no! Like, how much your tickets? Like $800. No, I can't do it. So. But our dear friends were there, like doing the show, and told us all about it. And there's pictures. He was delighted. It's a very and his wife was especially nice. She said, "Y'all were so kind to Jimmy."
So sweet.
That's so cute.
He laughed. Yes,
he really laughed very hard.
He laughed very hard during the Reagan play, which was not very kind to Ronnie.
So you were honest with Reagan, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
With the with either play, the 45 Presidents or the First Ladies, was there a surprise moment when you were researching the presidents or first ladies where you're like, oh my, like I was thinking the character would kind of go this way, but then you read something that totally changed your interpretation and you're like, I gotta use this.
Definitely, but I'm struggling to think of who. Do you have any?
Yeah, I would say I think that happened more with the ladies than the men. So one of the things that became really clear when we were writing First Ladies is that there is a dearth of information on these women. So much so that there's a whole play about that. Specifically about that, because it was really frustrating. So what you find out is that while we know reams about all the presidents, and it's easy to find resources, and you can easily search and get 20 things, the women, you really have to dig, and even then you're sometimes not able to find things. The person who surprised me the most out of the First Ladies was actually Lucy Hayes, because her husband was kind of an asshole. And what happened with that election was really similar to what happened to the Bush in the Bush-Gore situation, where they, a separate body stepped in to make a decision, and there was a lot of question about corruption and all the behind-the-scenes machinations. So his wife, though, from what I could find, was like the loveliest person ever. An abolitionist, an animal lover, a nature lover, generous, like very, very involved in charitable organizations and all kinds. I mean, like, you just read about her and you're like, everything about her is just like beautiful. She's just beautiful. And she is lost to history because he eclipses her. His story eclipses hers. And so we don't pay much attention to her.
A lot of the information that you do find about women, it's frustrating because it's within the context of the presidency and their relationship to the president. So you don't get a lot of like, what was their early life like? What was their life like afterwards? Or, who were they outside their marriage is kind of gone. I think I remember the big gem for me was Lucinda Garfield. And it's always like in both plays, it's the obscure people that feel the most rich and surprise you the most, because you feel like because they're obscure, they're going to be forgettable people. and you realize, no, this was the president and the first lady of the United States. It just so happens that nothing really amazing happened during this time, so we kind of forget them. But it doesn't mean they weren't incredible people. So I think I was surprised for every obscure person that I worked on. But I think Lucinda Garfield and her husband, James Garfield, what's really amazing about them is that they wrote letters to each other, like personal letters to each other, and they've survived. And a lot of that stuff gets burned. Lucinda Garfield was the first person. She's the one who's invented the whole presidential library concept. She created the first presidential library after her husband's death.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. That's the other thing you learn is that a lot of these women did like lasting things.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Like
things.
all the flowers that you see on the side of highways that was a first lady, the wildflowers. So anyway, like oh crap, what was I saying?
You're talking about Lucinda Garfield.
She made the library.
They had this really complicated relationship, and it's like when you read about it, it's uncomfortable. Like, I mean, it's not like, you know, it has its romantic moments, but like, I mean, he wrote something like "The tyranny of our love is sweet" was one of the things that he wrote to her, because it's like it's this complicated like emo relationship. And you feel really like icky being let into it, but it was really great. I mean, it formed the backbone of the play that I wrote, which is all about their complicated relationship. And she was really like, you know, just like an amazing woman who was absolutely caged by this, you know, like of his era kind of chauvinist, like
The patriarchy, if you will.
Yes, by the patriarchy.
Yeah. It sounds like a sardoodledom to me.
Definitely
does.
Yeah.
So those are the first ladies and the presidents that you found the most interesting tidbits about. But who's your favorite? Who's your first lady and your presidential favorite? Which one would you be like, that's my bro, and that's my gal?
Oh, wow. That's a good question.
Now, do they have to be married, or can you pick like Abraham Lincoln and Martha Washington and like
Sure.
Yeah.
just let
presidential potential power couples is an entirely different game.
Oh, that would be so fun.
Shipping historical figures.
Yeah.
Yes.
Abigail Adams and
Oh, yeah.
and Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah.
There's your presidential power couple.
Yeah.
Which one's president and which one is
It doesn't
first
matter.
lady?
I'd be happy if they could trade off, to be honest with you. You know, 4 years here, 4 years here. Just do a 16-year gig and I'd be happy.
On the men's side, I think Carter is one of my favorites. And on the women's side, there were a lot of women I ended up falling in love with. I've always been in love with Eleanor Roosevelt, but actually having written both Hayes and Hoover, they were two of the ones that I researched. Lucy Hayes and Lou Hoover are both amazing, like incredible, and again, kind of, you know, eclipsed in their historical, you know, spot. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
they were both amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
even what I said goes to reinforce what you were talking about. I know Abigail Adams and I know Eleanor Roosevelt because they are the two
And they are both
ladies
amazing. Absolutely.
but they're the ones who caused a ruckus and made history.
Yeah.
So
Well-behaved
You know?
women rarely make history.
True.
it's true.
So guys, if I wanted to see this, how would I do that? How do I get access to
okay.
seeing this play?
Okay, so
Good
right
question.
now, so unfortunately we don't have like a page yet that we've created, but that's in the works.
Okay.
So the best thing to do is to go to Neo-Futurists.org. Go to the homepage, like scroll down to the bottom. There's a button on the left that says join our mailing list. Click on that button and there will be a link, like a little checkbox that
Awesome.
says that you want to know about 45 Plays. So they don't bombard you about everything they do. Or you could learn about everything.
Got it. They do sound like a really cool organization. Yeah.
They are, and I think they are probably, you know, they are one of the only, if not the only, theater companies in the country that transitioned to online without taking a hit financially. I mean, I think there was a temporary
That's
dip,
amazing.
but suddenly,
Wow.
and this
Yeah.
is, their ticket sales are now, like what they're making now on Patreon is equivalent to what their ticket sales were. And they weren't making like
Wow.
$100 a week on ticket sales. Like they sold out like all weekend for like 30 years. So it's a substantial amount of money that they were able to make. And so their artists are okay. They can pay their bills. Everybody's working.
That's awesome.
And they're making theater accessible to people in a time where we can't go to the theater. And I'm like Bob was saying, I really hope that like Hamilton being accessible to people all over the world now, like as we go back to a normal, I'd love to see these theater be accessible to people who can't afford to go to the theater as much, or are not able to leave their homes yet. I love that the theaters are working so hard to make these things accessible, so that, I mean, I'm dying to get back into a theater, believe me, but it's just so awesome that there's so many people that are making efforts to make it so that theater is still accessible for less money and in a time when we can't leave our houses.
Yeah.
Neo-Futurists.org. Check the box.
And that starts September 24th, yeah?
Yeah, that's the current plan.
So right now, 45 plays for America's First Lady at the Neo-Futurists.org. September 24th. We will have the accurate date and all accurate links in the description. Join us as we return for our Steam Pop quiz and Lili again, only on Balderdash Academy. Go Dashers!
Molly starts with a poo-poo platter and ends up with a pea face. It's a crazy episode coming up on Balderdash Academy.
Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. You can find us on your favorite podcast service as Balderdash Academy. Go Dashers!